Hello, friends, and welcome back. It is great to be here hosting Wasn't That Special 50 years of Saturday Night Live. And today, a special guest is with us. We know sometimes just Christian and I talking can get a little, certainly not boring, but repetitive. So we have a new voice. We have a new voice to add, and someone who is far more knowledgeable about the show than we could ever be.
I don't
Uh,
know about that.
well, we'll find out. We'll ask some questions today. It is our privilege and pleasure. We are so happy to talk with Victoria Jackson, 6-year vet of SNL. You know her. You likely love her. We're going to talk in depth about a whole lot today about her time on the show and even some of her time off the show. And I want to make sure we mention right at the beginning that people can find you online at victoriajackson.com, and we'll discuss a bit later, but there's a brand new album that you have, When I Get to Nashville, some songs that you've recorded since moving to Nashville 11 years ago. We'll ask a bit more about that later, but people can find more at victoriajackson.com. Victoria, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's quite an honor. And hello, Christian. Hello, Scott.
I'm as excited to meet you as you were to meet Alec Baldwin. So that's a very famous story that your co-stars, co-cast members like to tell, that every time Alec Baldwin came onto the show, that you would go up to Dana Carvey and say, "I'm not going to do it this time. I am not going to fall in love with Alec Baldwin." And yet every time he was on, you would
Okay,
fall in love with Alec
hold
Baldwin.
on. That is Dana Carvey's story. That is not my story.
Okay,
I have
so
no
you can contest it.
I have no memory of that. I did have to kiss Alec Baldwin like a lot because the time he was the host, I was in a couple sketches where I had to kiss him, so I felt close to him, but I did not love him. I did not say I'm not going to fall in love. That's Dana's twisted, weird memory. My story is in my book. My book called Is My Bow Too Big? It's right over here somewhere. And my story is that Alec was sitting next to me on the set, and he asked me why my boobs were so big. Okay, that's rude.
Yeah.
And it's caustic and it's inappropriate. And I was being polite and nervous, and he was the host, and I started to answer him because he was maybe inferring I got breast implants or something. So I went into my lifelong story of my boobs. Starting at age 10, my gymnastic career, which halted my development, because when you're a gymnast and you're underweight and you're working out 5 hours a day, it stops puberty from coming. And I didn't get into puberty till I was 21. Anyway, I started my whole saga. He didn't want to hear. I didn't know if he was flirting with me or if he was being mean. It was kind of a mixture. And then I wanted to finish my saga to defend myself against his mean comment, and never really got to. But in my book, I wrote that I thought that was mean and rude of him, and I think he heard about that, and ever since, Alec's been mean to me, but that's probably because our political views are opposite. And I've also said that when he does an impression of Trump, he has hatred inside of him. It's not just comedy, it's like hatred. And so he probably read that. So then when Alec was on Fly on the Wall podcast with Dana Carvey, he said, Victoria Jackson, her breasts look like garbage cans.
What?
And I'm like, what does that even mean? I don't even understand what that means. A garbage can, it sounds mean. I don't know what it means. And so then I called Dana and I'm like, how could you let Alec talk about me like that? What does that mean, garbage cans? I was actually at the dentist and I was screaming into the phone. What does that mean? My breasts look like garbage cans. And my poor dentist was in the other room with some patient. Oh my goodness. Anyway, long story short, Dana's recollection is not, I don't think it's accurate. And
Okay. So aside from Alec Baldwin, you were on with a lot of male stars. Are there any that really that you were starstruck by? I mean, you got to kiss a lot of them too. You got to kiss Sean Penn while he was married to Madonna and others. So who are some of the ones that you were like really excited to meet?
well, we got used to meeting celebrities because for 6 years, like every week we were meeting them. So we weren't very awestruck, except I do remember when Mel Gibson was the host,
Yeah.
that there was an aura about him that I just, it was like, I could feel that it was an aura. It was some kind of like a charisma or movie star aura. And I wasn't impressed by anybody. So I was like, wow, why am I feeling that when I'm around him? And I was impressed with Steve Martin because I was a fan. So I was intimidated. In the sketch with him, he actually asked my comic advice, and I was like, Steve Martin is asking my comedy opinion. He said, should I crawl out of the sketch, the slide whistle sketch?
Yeah.
He's like, should I walk out on my knees? And I was like, I guess so. He'd look short, but I was like, I don't know. And so I was intimidated by him, but he was very serious. And he wasn't like super warm and cuddly. He was kind of serious about the comedy, like as if it was plastic surgery.
I want to ask about the beginning of your time on SNL, Victoria, because you joined the show at a time when it was nothing was certain, right? It was season 11 had not gone the way Lauren wanted, and season 12 is, Dana arrives and you arrive and Phil Hartman arrives and Jan Hooks arrives on the show. Did you understand the situation the show was in when you began on season 12? I guess NBC only ordered 10 episodes, like a half season of the show. Did you guys know what you were getting into when you started on SNL?
Not really. We were all just trying not to get fired one day at a time. And I was an out of work actress who went from acting job to acting job, hoping there would be another one. And I always kind of thought of my acting jobs as a fluke, kind of a gamble of a career. Sorry about that noise. That's my fireplace, and the wind is blowing trees against it. So it's going to keep doing that squeaking noise. But anyway, we were being always compared to the first cast, the 75 to 80 cast.
Mhm.
And so we were always like, well, we're never going to be the original cast. So, lighten up. We also were aware that the season before us, Lauren had fired a lot of people. So we knew that we could be fired at any minute. Our contract protected them, but not us. It said that we were not allowed to leave for 5 years, but they were allowed to fire us. So in other words, if we got real famous and got lots of movie offers, we were not allowed to leave, but they could get rid of us anytime. So yeah, we weren't dwelling on all of that. We were just trying to think of ideas and get airtime because we were competing against each other for airtime and try not to get fired.
Early on in the first season that you're on the show, there's this really neat it's a shorter sketch. You and Kevin Nealon, and Kevin's an agent, and you walk in and you're trying out for a part, and he's on a phone, and he has all these hand movements that you're misinterpreting. You think he wants you to spin around, and then eventually you jump out the window at the end of the sketch. It's such a fun sketch, and it
Yeah.
shows your ability at physical comedy. And I feel Christian and I both feel this way, and it's not just because you're a guest on our show, that watching back through those seasons, your contributions are really underrated. And I think one of the reasons you fit so well is your attitude, your style sort of fit with some of the more kind of esoteric comedic minds in the writer's room. Like Jack Handy would have this really out there kind of stuff, and you kind of fit that. Did you feel like you, even if you weren't the big star, that your style, your brand of comedy was just in line with what the show was trying to do at that time?
What a great question. I felt like I was underused, um, especially the last couple years. Um, always felt like I was underused, but I felt like I got some great moments. And I think my best moments were written by Jack Handy, Jim Downey, and Al Franken. The Desert Island with Paul Simon. The
Yes.
Jumping Out the Window was written by Kevin Nealon. And that's like, I'm so glad you brought it up. That's like my favorite, one of my favorite all-time sketches. And yes, it was kind of under the radar, but um, Kevin, I was the perfect person to play that. And same as the Paul Simon on the island.
Yeah.
Like some of those Harvard geniuses like Jim Downey, if they focused on me, they could really write something that was perfect for my essence. But they didn't have time because they were writing for lots of other cast members, and mostly not for cast members, but just for trying to think of great ideas for comedy ideas. But I love that flying out the window sketch. And I was a gymnast, so I was good at physical comedy, and I wish I could have done more of it. But I wanted to tell you, at the rehearsals, every time I flew out the window, it was perfect. But on the live air show, my back hit the wrong spot of the window, and I couldn't flip out easily and hit the mattress on the other side. I kind of, my back hit too low, and I had to force myself over with my feet. It was like clunky. And I was like, oh, because, oh man, I flew out the window all the other times, but that was so much fun.
So like Scott said, when we first started watching you, we noticed right away that the physicality, and I figured that was probably because of the gymnastics and other things. But it seems like in a lot of modern media, they don't think as highly of your time on the show, and that may be because of politics or maybe because of any number of things. But like Rolling Stone had some list where you were pretty low. But as we watched the show, you were yes, you were underused in points, but you were the dominant female on the show for a full 6 years. So it's impossible to say that you weren't one of the best in that cast. So how does it make you feel that you are not getting kind of the appreciation now that you should be?
Well, thanks. That's a good question. Rolling Stone is definitely hates me because I'm a Christian conservative. So there's no way they're going to put me high on a list. So I kind of think of that as a badge of honor,
Yeah.
because I don't really line up with a lot of their values. Um, I think Jan Hooks was the best female cast member, like of all time, except for Kristen Wiig, maybe. Those two. Uh, Jan Hooks was so talented. She didn't know how to be herself, which I'm always myself. She could become anyone, which is what acting really is. But she, like, who is Jan Hooks? Who knows? But she could become Ivanka Trump, and she could become Ivana Trump. She could become the Marla Maples. She could be Betty Davis. She was brilliant. And when she would play something, she had an extra level of some extra added layer, and I could never figure out what it was. Like if I was supposed to play a waitress flirting with Alec Baldwin in that sketch where she's at the diner,
Right.
I would have just been like, huh, flirting with Alec. But she was like flirting with Alec with this underlying whole story she was bringing to it of bitter, jaded, chain smoking, wait, like she brought so much depth. I couldn't figure out how she did it. She was brilliant. But I do want to say thank you for noticing I was in the cast, because even one time I went to Lauren's office and I had to wait an hour to talk to him because he's very busy. You always have to wait an hour. Sat outside his office for an hour. I come in and I go, Lauren, I don't know how to get more lines. I didn't have any lines last week. I feel stupid in the goodnight bows because I'm bowing, but I didn't do anything. He goes, Victoria, you're a lot more, what do I say? A lot more obvious than you think you are. It's something like, you are more on the show than you think you are, or something. And then I said, oh, and then he goes, did you bring food? Did you hear that?
No.
No.
There was just a huge noise. My dog got scared. They're doing construction over there. Anyway, so Lauren says, did you bring food to the writers? And I was like, I didn't know if he was joking, but I did get some food and bring it to some of the writers. Like, hi, could you write for me something? Anyway, so to answer your question, I think the articles that minimize my contribution are because of ulterior motives. They probably don't like my Christian conservativeness.
So as we watch these, we pass notes back and forth and we say, Victoria seems like the only female that's really fully integrated with the cast. Because you have Jan and you have Nora, and they're off to the side doing Sweeney Sisters, or they're off to the side. They're kind of quarantined from the rest of the cast. And it seemed like you got a lot of the regular parts. Like you were more, the writers seemed to like writing for you a lot more.
Never
And that's
thought
just the
of
impression
that
you get from watching it. I mean, you were female cast member #1 in a lot of stuff. So that's the impression that we got as we were watching.
I never knew that. I never got that impression. But the Sweeney sisters, I asked them, what are you working on? And they slammed the door in my face, because I thought that women's groups were always trios, like the McGuire sisters, the Andrew sisters. Like there was only 3 women in the cast when we joined. And I was thinking, why'd they leave me out? But so I would write things for myself on the update desk, because that's all I knew how to write, was my point of view. Doing handstands, I didn't know what else to write. They kind of ganged up on me, so that's why you always see them together. And I think the writers used me a lot as the bimbo or the ditz, very small parts, but in sketches. But I never thought I was used more than them. I thought I was used less, but yeah, it was very competitive.
Well, so in one of the books, the Miller Shales book, you're interviewed and you say that you actually went to Lauren and said, there's this woman, Jan Hooks, who's a great actress, and you should get her on the show. And so you helped her in that regard. And then later there's a quote almost right underneath it where Jan is like, I never really liked Victoria. So how did it make you feel to see her say something like that after you helped her get on the show?
Well, I did help her when I auditioned, and he said, he said, your audition was very funny, but I think you're weak in characters and impressions. And then, my whole story is I flew back home to LA, realized I was on Johnny Carson in 2 weeks, continued my audition for Lorne Michaels on Johnny Carson, did some impressions, made everyone laugh, and got the job. But when I was being interviewed by Lauren that time, I said, oh, you want the best woman for impressions and characters? Jan Hooks. I just worked with her in the Half Hour Comedy Hour, my second TV series, I think. And there was a cast of us with Arsenio Hall, and I saw her talent. Well, she was, her and Nora were very mean to me for the whole time we were there. And I remember calling my dad crying once, and I was like, Dad, I'm afraid to drink my coffee at the read-through because I'm afraid they put poison in it. He's like, oh, you think they're plotting against you? I'm like, I wouldn't be surprised. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, it was competitive. And so, if I got a line or a joke, there's jealousy there. Also, I was getting movie roles and I think they weren't. And I think that made them not like me, but also they weren't good on talk shows. And I'd already been on Johnny Carson many, many times. And because Jan didn't really know how to be herself, which is a great quality for an actress, as I already said. But yeah, I was trying to learn how to do more characters and voices and impressions, and I did get to do them. I learned how to do Roseanne and Zsa Zsa, and it was like comedy college there. But yeah, it hurt my feelings, but the boys were nice to me. Dana Carvey, John Lovitz, and Kevin Nealon were very nice to me, and they were on my other side of my office. So I would hang out in Kevin's office, and they would be trying to make each other laugh all day and working on Hans and Franz or what have you, or the church lady, and I would be like there laughing, and I would say like, please give me a part, and they did. They wrote me into Hans and Franz as Roseanne. They wrote me in. Kevin wrote me into the Subliminal Guy, my first sketch I was ever in. Kevin wrote me into the Flying Out the Window thing. So they made up for the mean people because they were super nice to me.
There's a famous meeting, I guess, that took place where you had it out with everyone, and someone said you ended up standing on a chair and yelling. How did that come about, and what happened there?
Okay, well, this is how it happened because I'm very kind. I never raise my voice. I never say bad words. I never complain. I was trained as a Southern Baptist little girl, to try to be like Jesus all the time. And, if they get slapped on the cheek, turn the other cheek, if they ask for your coat, give them your. Anyway, so I was always very quiet and kind. The story is what happened was Dinah Mina, it's a funny cartoon name, but she was in charge of the talent. And there was a lot of conflict in the first couple of years that I was there. And so she called a meeting, all of the cast, and we were all in this room, sitting on the floor, sitting on couches. And she said, okay, we have a lot of tension and friction. How can we make it better? Anybody have any ideas? Nobody said a word. She goes, does anyone have anything to say of what's wrong? Why is there this negative? And nobody said a word. I love honesty, So nobody said a word. So she called on me. Dinah Minot, called on me. She's like, Victoria? I'm like, and so I stood on the couch. It was hard to stand on because it was mushy. Not a chair, it was a couch. Because I wanted everyone to see and hear me clearly. I didn't want, so I go, like, you really want to know? I don't think you can handle the truth. You really want to know? So I stood up. I go, well, what's wrong with the cast is that Jan and Nora are, I think I said BITCHDS, to speak their language, are biatches from hell. I said hell. And I said because it felt like that. It felt like demonic. I go, and I said, and they are mean and they slam doors in people's faces and they don't cooperate, and they say they won't be in a sketch. Like someone wrote one that they said, no, we're not going to be in that. And they backbite, and they gossip, and they backstab. And and I said, I think that's what's wrong with the show. And then I sat down, and there was, oh, before I finished, Jan and Nora slowly stood up and walked out the door. Nobody was defending them. They walked out, and there was silence. And then I was like, well, thanks a lot for backing me up. And then Dana goes, you didn't hear anyone disagreeing. And everyone broke out in laughter. And that's how I remember it. But of course, Nora says she called me names or something, but I would never call anyone names, or, that's how I remember it. But it was such a funny moment because everyone agreed with me, but they wouldn't say it out loud.
You can find Victoria's recent work and information at victoriajackson.com, including the new album, When I Get to Nashville. I want to ask a couple of questions about Weekend Update and your contributions on Update. I think you had songs, you had handstands. I have to tell you, I think that the best thing that you ever did on Update was the season 13 Life of a Coffee Mug piece, which then moves into you lowering your voice, taking off your wig to show your real black hair, and saying how tired you are of playing the bimbo, and you can't believe people are buying this character you're playing. And then you say, I'm going to do what I do best, which is insightful political commentary. And you do a poem about Daniel Noriega's mustache. And you're hilarious, but it's great because the audience has no idea how to react. You can tell watching back that there is at least a split second where they are thinking, wait a minute, this is real. She was faking it the whole time. It's a brilliant piece, I think, on Update. So did you write that yourself? And then also, can you tell us a bit about how Update works, meaning especially for Dennis's run? Did Dennis run the desk? Did he maintain sort of a tone that he wanted on Update, those 8-10 minutes per show? Did he end up deciding who would get those desk pieces? How do those get to the air?
Wow, great question. Okay, I did write that. I was kind of getting tired of being cast as the bimbo, but it was also part of the whole joke. Like Kevin Nealon once said that there was a meeting in Lauren's office and they all were talking about, is Victoria Jackson really stupid, or is she really smart pretending to be stupid? And they actually had a meeting about that. And I don't know the answer. So that's what makes it even more interesting. Oh, I have a joke in my act about it. And this is true. My dad took me to the University of Miami when I was 12 for an IQ test, and they wouldn't give us the score because they said it would affect our lives forever. That's true. So anyway, I did write that. I might have had a little help, but I did write the poems and I did write the concept. I probably wrote the whole thing. Did Dennis have control? I've always wondered. I think Dennis and whoever else was the guy, whether it was Norm or whoever, when I started, there was a guy named Herb Sargent, very old guy, and he was in charge of Update. And he had this office, and he was just in there looking at newspapers, seeing what's current news is, what events, what's current. And I remember him and Dennis Miller were always talking about Update. Now, I've always wondered, like, did Dennis write all the jokes on Update? No, he did get other people helping him, like they would give him ideas. I don't know what percent was his. I feel like it was mostly his ideas or jokes, and Herb would help. Now, Herb one time said to me, Victoria, you're in the Wall Street Journal. And I was like, what? Because I don't read the Wall Street Journal. But he read all the newspapers of the day. And he said, yeah, look, they mentioned you, 1987, Year of the Bimbo. And it was commenting on my song, I'm Not a Bimbo, which I wrote, which the idea was given to me by Christine Zander, who put People magazine on my desk, and Jessica Hahn said, I am not a bimbo, and then stripped for Playboy. So she goes, this would be perfect for you. And I thought, why isn't she writing it? She's the writer. But I quickly thought, I could write this, and made it a song, and it was a big hit. But anyway, so I think Herb and Dennis would meet together. I think Dennis would make up most of the jokes, but people helped him. And we would all submit a little thing, like everybody knew if you wanted airtime and you're having trouble getting airtime, write something for update. And, so one week there might be 4 people, like Nora might have submitted something as her French character. I might have submitted, I'm not a bimbo. Someone else, Al Franken might have submitted something about Noriega or something. And then Herb and Lauren probably, and the head writer, whether it's Al Franken or Jim Dan, they would pick, I think maybe Herb would pick which person, 1 or 2, got to do the update little thing on the side. Oh, the thing about the low voice, the funny thing is, so I had been practicing lowering my voice since high school, because my speech teacher who put on the play at Dade Christian, she would not let me be in the play because she said I talked like a baby to get attention. And I said, well, Miss Mullins, I'm sorry, I'm not talking like this on purpose. Teach me, speech teacher, how to talk lower. And she said, pretend like you're walking down a flight of stairs. So my whole life I was going, if I talk like I'm going downstairs, then I would talk like this, but how can I be myself if I'm talking? So I've been practicing. And then one day I discovered I could talk like that. It hurt. It hurt. And so I was thinking, how can I use that funny low voice in the show? So I thought of that update idea. And then the funniest part is, after I did it, my dad called me and he goes, Vicky, that was so scary because I thought maybe that's the real you. And you've been fooling your parents your whole life. And I was like, yeah.
He was the audience.
And Lauren's idea was to take off the brown wig and have the blonde under it and finish with the blonde. That was his note. And he's so smart. I was just going to take off the blonde. I'm really a brunette who's serious. But then Lauren goes, no, the audience is going to want you to take off the brown and be back to yourself. So that was his note.
Right. Looked like you had the brown one clipped on so tight though, because you had to take the blonde one off and then put that you couldn't get the brown one off.
It was hard with all the clips and stuff,
I think a lot of people probably wonder just the most basic question of all, which is, what is it like being in an SNL skit? Like, what are you thinking about? Can you hear the audience if they're laughing, or are you just so locked in on what you have to say, or reading the cue cards, or what the other actor is doing, or like, what are you thinking about while you're in the middle of a sketch?
Such great questions. You are totally focused. Like, I didn't have that many lines, so I memorized mine. But Phil Hartman he was in like 12 sketches. And he's so professional, he memorized his too, pretty much. But we had cue cards under each camera. So if there's 3 cameras, cue cards there, cue cards there, cue cards there. When the red light goes on, that camera's on. So if it's pointing at me and the red light is on and I'm supposed to say my line, by the way, people think we just ad lib. No. That would be a mess. That would be chaos.
Yeah.
So you can't really ad lib because it's like this. So So the red light's on, it's on me. I know it's my line. So I am thinking I'm supposed to be talking to her. There's my cue card if I forget my line. The camera's on me. And so I'd go like, no, so I was trying to not look at the cue card, except on update, you're right in front of the camera, and it's
Right.
teleprompter. You can stare at your lines, so easy. But yeah, I don't really hear the audience. I don't really think about millions of people are watching, not at all. I'm just focused on staying in my character, not breaking character, because that's not professional. Some people did do it, but when we started, Lauren said, that's Carol Burnett. We don't break. And I agreed with them. I love when people don't break character. I think it's amateur when they break character. And it's what's the word when you're doing it for yourself? It's fun for you.
Yeah.
There's a word for that.
Well, Phil never broke character, and Dana only did in Massive Head Wound Harry when the dog started eating his brains.
You guys did your research.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you're focused. You're totally focused. When I first started doing characters, I said, Dana, I was doing Roseanne. I had a fat suit on. I was trying to talk like Roseanne. I had a brown wig on. And it was like my first impression that I'd ever done on the air. And I said, Dana, what if I start talking like myself in the middle of it? He goes, cop an attitude, cop an attitude. And I was like, what does that mean? Cop an attitude. So I guess it's just like you just become that, you know. So yeah, so you're focused. Maybe out of the background, I could hear the audience. I could tell if they were, you can feel if they're liking, you can feel if they're applauding or laughing. You can feel it, but you're focused on your lines and you're staying in character. Oh, what's it like? So like lots of adrenaline, lots of waiting around. It's hard to wait around when you have adrenaline, you know. Sometimes they would cut your sketch in between dress and air. So you'd have all this adrenaline and nowhere to put it because your sketch got cut.
Yeah.
So you're like, it's like the show ends at 1 a.m. The party ends at 2 or 3 a.m. You drive home, you have tons of adrenaline, nowhere to put it. And I had a big.
Lovett said he used to go get a big giant piece of chocolate cake, which is why he ended up putting on so much weight during the course of the show.
He did not do drugs or drink or smoke. And I used wine to calm down. And I do not recommend it. But I thought that I didn't have a guilty conscience because Jesus drank wine and Jesus turned water into wine. And I was like, you know. And then yeah.
I want to ask about your songs. So you mentioned "I Am Not a Bimbo," which was a Weekend Update piece, but you also did songs that were not part of Update, that were just, you know, in a place where a sketch would be. There was a great one called "Draw the Line" from season 15. Back on Update, you did "I Love a Cop" in, I believe, your final season in 17. And then in your very first season, what the heck? How did you get to sing a song with Willie Nelson and have Willie Nelson sing your song, which, by the way, is a fantastic song?
It's my favorite. It's so adorable. It's incredible.
Thank you. Well, I was singing songs because I did not know how to write a sketch or a character. And my whole time there, I was trying to figure out how to do it. It was like, how do you make up the liar? How do you make up the church lady? Should I be someone who talks like that? Like, how do you? Because I didn't have any training at the Groundlings or Second City. And so when there was a writer's strike, I actually enrolled in the Groundlings beginner class as an SNL cast member because I really wanted to crack the nut on this thing. Like, how do you do this show? So I wrote songs just because I didn't, because I've been writing songs on my ukulele since I was 10. And I did them in my stand-up act. I did them on Johnny Carson. I thought, well, so I submitted my boyfriend song when Willie Nelson was the host, and the Sweeney sisters also had a sketch where they were singing with Willie. And I knew Lauren wouldn't have a woman singing with Willie and another sketch with a woman singing with Willie. And we all knew that he was going to have to choose between me or them. And they didn't tell us until the show had already started. And we both we're all in our costumes. And like 1 minute before they go, and it's Victoria. I'm like, oh, okay. So I rush out on the stage and I'm like, they picked me. And Willie had not even rehearsed. He was kind of looking at the cue cards. He winged it, and he's so charming. He pulled it off. But that's why I was singing the songs. I've written them my whole life. I've noticed that whenever something hurts me, I write a song about it. Usually it has a solution at the end for my pain. What you were mentioning my new album, I just found it.
There it
This
is.
is 18 songs that I've written since I moved to Nashville 11 years ago. And yeah, on my website, victoriajackson.com, I have like my songs from my youth and SNL and Johnny. And then these are my recent ones, mostly about marriage challenges, like how do you undo I do? Oh yeah. And my children, and anyway. And then there's stand up at the end of it. So you can buy it on Amazon or stream or whatever.
Stream it on Amazon or buy it right from your website, which is
Amazon or my
victoriajackson.com.
website. Yeah. But anyway, I wanted to tell you something. Oh, I wanted to tell you this. So for 30, I left the show in 92. How many years has it been since that? 40? Yeah, the 50th reunion is like 40 years.
30.
Okay.
30.
32.
Okay.
Yep.
32 years since I left the show. I've been trying to figure out how to do character. And also,
And I came up with Harriet. My name's Harriet. I'm a blue-blooded lover from my head to my toes.
anyway, so I came up with that, but I actually stole it from my friend Fran, who was making fun of her husband's new wife, Harriet. No, her ex-husband's new wife, Harriet. So I said, Fran, can I steal that? Can I pay you $50 to steal it from you? Anyway, so what I want to tell you was for 30 years, I've been trying to figure out what SNL was, and I figured it out. In 75, when it was created by Lorne Michaels, TV was new. TV was this new thing. It had news, it had game shows, it had soap operas, and it had commercials and talk shows. And I kept being on the show thinking, why do they keep doing talk shows? Why do they keep doing game shows? Why do they have the news? And why do they make fun of commercials? And then recently, I was like, when Lauren came in as the rebellious hippies, the pot-smoking wild hippies have invaded NBC. They were making fun of television. They were making fun of the news. They were making fun of commercials. They were making fun of game shows. They were making fun of talk shows. They were making fun of television, which took itself seriously and was like, leave it to Bieber and everything. Now it's way past that. We've way gone past pushing the envelope on what's appropriate and what's moral. We're way past that. But in 75 to 80, the original cast, they were the wild hoodlums running the halls and being with the rebels. And isn't that, am I correct?
Yeah, I think that's perfectly right. Yeah.
I think even Lauren at some point had said, he wanted the show to be designed specifically for the generation that grew up on TV. So to your point, it's the generation that saw the news right next to soap operas and commercials and Buy It Now and all those things that you talk about. It's a good insight.
But you see, I didn't have a television when I grew up. And so that's why I might have seemed esoteric, because what does esoteric mean again? I might have seemed alternative because I did not grow up with the television generation being brainwashed to think and dress and act exactly like they do.
Well, that's interesting. When you first started on the show, we found a clipping. Apparently, some reporter went and talked to your parents right after your first show, talked to Jim and Marlene, and they were both very, very proud of you. This was right after your first show. Your dad, though, was like, it'd be nice if she was on maybe a little more wholesome show. Like he literally said, I wish she was on Newhart.
Mhm.
Oh.
But yeah, they were very proud of you. But that brings up something else. We also talked to Siobhan Fallon, and
Mhm.
she brought up the Italian restaurant sketch, Il Cantori, and she said she refused to be in that because she's a prim, good, proper Catholic girl, and she has a dad and all that stuff. You ended up in that sketch, and probably the funniest part of it. Is there any sketch that you refused to do that where they just crossed the line?
Let me tell you about that Cantori thing. It is so
Okay.
interesting. Siobhan was like the only cast member woman I ever met who had a church background like I did.
Mhm.
And I really loved that. It was like, oh, she loves God like I do. And we're in kind of an edgy situation here. The thing is, we could turn down things. And I turned down a sketch. I told Lauren, I don't think I can do it because I was supposed to pray in the middle of it. And I thought prayer was really talking to God, and I thought it was blasphemous. And I said, if I pray in the middle of this sketch, I will either start crying or I think I'll be struck by lightning because uh, I shouldn't do that. Okay, so I turned down things that I thought were immoral. The El Cantori thing was the weirdest situation. What happened was when I gave my speech on the couch about Jan and Nora, they had just turned down a sketch that had women with big butts because they said it was the feminist movement would not like that. And I thought, and I remember saying, I'll wear a big butt costume because I always had a flat butt and I always wished I had a butt, you know. I was like, who cares if you have a big butt or what, you know? I don't think that's offensive to make fun of women with big butts. So anyway, they never did the big butt sketch because Jan and Nora said, no, that's anti-feminism. And I thought, so picture I'm there, you know, I already was thinking you shouldn't turn down that. I'll turn down praying. Okay, so, and plus I always had my butt in the air doing handstands, which I thought was not very Christian, but I was raised as a gymnast since I was born in a leotard, which is naked, doing handstands, and my dad was my coach. So I never thought of it as sexual or dirty. You know, I knew other people were like, ooh, but you know, entertainment is, yeah. So anyway, here's the Cantori thing. I'm backstage and I'm thinking, oh, I have one line in the show this week, something. And someone goes, Victoria, somebody cancel a thing and we need you on the set. I'm like, huh, what? They go, we're gonna add you to the Cantori sketch. Well, I hadn't even seen it because I'm not in it. Hadn't paid any attention to it.
Right.
I didn't know Dana was going to be humping me with my legs in the air. I had no idea. It was like dress rehearsal. It was like right before dress rehearsal live. And they're like, they want you to be in the, I'm like, well, what do I have lines? What lines? What are my lines? And they don't answer me. They push me on the set. They go, lay on the table and put your legs in the air. And this is what Siobhan had turned down. And I'm like, oh, they probably thought I had good legs because everybody thinks I have good legs because of gymnastics. You know, my parents said, accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative. you know, my mom would encourage me to wear shorter skirts because that was my asset. You know, oh, Vicky, you have thin hair. Oh, Vicky, you have a thick waist. Oh, you have good legs, you know. So I'm like, oh, okay. And they're like, lay on the table. I'm like, what? So I lay on the table. I don't even know what they're doing. Put my legs in the air, and Dana's like giggling and like humping sort of. And I'm like, oh. And then it was the air show. And to me, I was like, wait a minute, wait a minute. And I was like, well, I said, you know what? I was thinking in my head, nobody will know it's me because I don't have any lines. I'm upside down and you just see legs in the air. And I thought, and still, by the time it was over with, I was like, I think I just did a very inappropriate thing.
For the people at home who haven't seen the sketch, it's Kirstie Alley and Kevin Nealon are a couple. They go to an Italian restaurant where the wait staff is very
Affectionate.
affectionate. Yes, right.
Bella,
Bella, Bella.
Pizza, have some, it's so good.
Ends up
Yeah,
with Rob
and-
Schneider and Adam Sandler essentially naked, serving them in the restaurant, and yeah, and the thing
They
happens
just
with you
take it
and
over
Dana.
the top. The friendliness of Italian waiters, they just take it to the extreme. And so I didn't want to back out of it right before a live show because that would be very, you know, unprofessional. And anyway, you know, I didn't want to be like the Baptist prude who causes trouble, you know.
I don't know if you know this. Dana was just talking about this sketch on his show, and he said that between dress and the live show, the censors did come in and like I think the story was that they told Rob Schneider to tell Dana to don't do that on the live show. Don't do the humping on the live show. And apparently Rob just, forgot. No, intentionally didn't tell Dana not to do it, but there was at least an effort from the network to not have that reach the live show.
And they probably were covering their own, you know, saying, we told them not to,
Right,
but
right.
nobody really was that offended, I don't think.
No,
I'm not even that offended because I get the joke. The joke is just taking it over the top. I mean, I was in the penis sketch where the joke was we said the word penis 50 times. And I was like, oh, this is so silly.
wait, Christian counted. How many is it, Christian? How many was it?
It was like 48 or something like that.
48. Not quite 50 times the word was said.
They get lost in the song somewhere. I don't know. It could be 50.
I do want to ask about another sketch that that struck me in your last season. It was also the last season for Johnny Carson, where you got your big break years earlier, and you're in a sketch which is Dana and Phil are doing Johnny Carson's last show, and you're the guest, and you're telling a story which, knowing a bit about you, was a true story. You had gotten divorced from a fire eater, and then were, I think at that point might have been engaged already to your husband who was a cop, and you're telling
Yeah.
the story, and Dana kind of stops as Johnny Carson, and he's mean to you. He's like, get off the stage. Every time you come on, you do the same bit, and he sort of whisks you off the stage in this
Mm.
last Tonight Show bit. And that felt mean to me. And perhaps it's because I knew that you were telling a real story. Like you were like you had weaved yourself into that sketch. And then for Dana as Johnny to kind of say, we don't like you, you're not funny, you do the same thing all the time, the high voice, get off this. I don't know if I was surprised you did that or agreed to it, or did you feel that was mean to you? Did you feel that was too personal?
Um, it does seem mean. I I didn't feel offended. I was just so happy to have airtime. Like, oh, I'm in something this week. I thought it was more mean to Johnny Carson. And I think that he was offended by it and hurt. And Johnny never had me back on after that. So I think that he was hurt. And not that he would have had me on because it was his final ending time. He hadn't had me on for a while near then, but I thought of it more as we want to show the Victoria thing, acknowledging that she was a regular.
Mhm.
But how do we get rid of her so we can keep doing the sketch? What's
Right.
a good way to get her off so that someone else can come in the chair? So I thought of it more as, well, that's a funny twist. Johnny would never be mean to her. He's always nice to her. So I just thought of it as them trying to figure out what to do with me to get on with the sketch, because the sketch wasn't about me. It was about Johnny or
Right.
Arsenio or something.
There's a really interesting, a really weird tidbit in one of the books. When you flew to New York to audition for Saturday Night Live, was there really a woman that auditioned fully nude before you?
Well, I heard the rumor when I was in the hallway.
Seems
and
like an odd, an odd choice.
somebody said, that girl just stripped for her audition. And I remember thinking, it doesn't matter how pretty you are naked for this show. That was pretty stupid of her.
Yeah, you can't be naked on NBC. So in the early 1990s, there's this weird season where some of the core cast, some of your group, you know, Dana's still there, Phil is still there, I think Jan is still there, you're still there. But then they start moving in this whole new crop of people. Farley, Rock, Schneider, David Spade, Sandler, you know, Julie Sweeney, all these people. What was that like to have to you all still being there, but then having to kind of incorporate this whole new set of people at the time?
That's a great question. It was a very awkward time because our contract was 5 years. Lauren said I could stay as long as I want. That's what he told my agent, James Dixon at William Morris. But I said to James Dixon, but they're not using me. And they got all these new people who have all these new ideas. I mean, after 5 years, I'm like, how many more ways can I do a handstand? How many more songs do I have? You know, besides a low voice, what else? We were even like the church lady and Hans and Franz were running out of like, how do we bring back the church lady? How do we bring back Hans? Because, you know, we were tired probably. I mean, I lived on adrenaline for 6 years, but, so when he was bringing new people in, I felt like it was insulting. I felt like it was kind of like, okay, we're thinking of getting rid of you guys. It was kind of, because we hit a stride. Like
Mhm.
our cast, the first year we thought we would get fired. The second year we were like doing good, and like the newspapers are going, they're the best cast since the original, and we were clicking. And so after 5 years, when he started to kind of bring in new people, it was like, but we're clicking. And I remember when Mike Myers was new there, I was kind of like, well, we don't need him. he was he was probably thinking, sorry I'm new. Sorry I'm new, he was probably feeling like that. And then the thing that personally affected me was when he brought in Siobhan, Ellen Cleghorn, and two blondes, Melanie and this other blonde. I was like, wait a minute.
I'm still here.
I'm
Well,
still here. I don't have any lines. And now you're bringing in 5 women. I mean, we had 3 women fighting for lines. Why is there 8 women fighting for? What is the thinking there?
Specifically, Victoria, Christian and I both separately as we take notes on these seasons. And when Julia Sweeney comes on, he and I both had the same reaction, which is Julia is taking roles that are perfect for Victoria. And so we're watching like Victoria would be great in that, or Victoria would be great in that. And nothing against Julia, and maybe you couldn't do Pat, of course. But was that going through your mind too? Like, oh, maybe I like this new person, but man, she is really similar in the type of roles that she can play on this show.
Yes, I was thinking that would be my role, but I also knew they were trying to give her things to do. And I know why they brought her on. Lauren brought her on because she had Pat. She was in second, she was in the Groundlings. Pat was a big hit. And Lauren wanted Pat. He didn't care about, you know. And so, yeah, she was doing things I could do, but she had Pat. And he wanted that Pat. And he brought you know, Dana had Church Lady when he got hired.
Mhm.
And Lovitz had the liar already. So
Yep.
Lauren was just picking, oh, that character would work on my show. That character would be a hit on my show. And then like with me, I guess everyone says, you are the character. So Lauren probably said, oh, I can see her fitting in here. But yeah, but Spade and Farley and David Spade, Chris Farley and Rob Schneider, they came in as this new little clique. And we were the old clique. And they didn't really write anything for me. So, and they didn't really talk to me very much. So they were always like in their little clique laughing and writing stuff for each other. And I was intimidated. I wouldn't have gone up and said, will you please write me something? I felt more comfortable with my old timers doing that. But they seem to be have more juvenile humor.
Yeah.
Not as psychological or Harvardy or deep, but more like, you know, putt jokes and, you know, big penis jokes, right? It just seemed more juvenile things. Um, but I was a huge fan of oh, Rob Schneider's been very sweet to me. He's on my he does a cameo on my new CD, my music CD. He has a great singing voice. He's a very interesting person. He's very talented and well, he's becoming a conservative now, but anyway, I'm in touch with him a little bit now, but when he was the new guy, I didn't really have that much. We were in like 2 sketches together, a couple, but and then I remember when Adam Sandler was new, his first thing was a commercial, and I had to kiss him. And my little daughter got a crush on him, and um, she was like 4 or something. And Farley, of course, was in my all-time favorite sketch, the Chippendales audition.
So talk about that. We debated that quite a bit, whether you have some people that say, well, this was the beginning of Chris's downfall because it made him feel bad about himself.
No.
Others say, oh, Jim Downey, who wrote it, said the joke was that he like thinks that he's actually good. So where do you come down on that? What do you think about that?
I love that sketch. Being a gymnast growing up, being told to lose 5 pounds every day of my life, 10 pounds every day. That sketch was brilliant. And Chris Farley was always using his weight for his humor. Way before that sketch, he was, you know, using it. I often think, could a woman do that? Could a woman be fat? And it seems like people feel sorry for a woman who's fat, but not for a man who's fat or something. I don't know. I know Toady Fields made fun of her weight, maybe, but it doesn't seem the same. I don't know if a woman could be like, you know, look at my fat jiggle when I don't know. But I thought the brilliance of Chris Farley is he's totally committed. The innocent, what I loved about it was the innocent, the childlike innocence of thinking you could actually get the Chippendales job was symbolic to me of innocence and hope when you haven't been beaten down and you're not bitter yet in life and you could think you can do anything. I think that's a beautiful quality. And he did it so well. And he danced so well. And he, you know, I just love that sketch. And I do not think for 1 second Chris Farley was embarrassed about it. I think Chris Farley could have been a leading man if he wasn't overweight because he was a great actor. And yeah, I thought that showed he was a great actor.
Yeah, your last year on the show was his second season on the show, and he was running into quite a bit of problems with alcohol at the time. Did you see any of that behind the scenes or not in the
I
office or
never,
anything?
I never saw anybody doing any drugs or alcohol the whole time I was there. I smelled marijuana 2 times coming out of some door, some crack in some office door. I had a baby, so I always went home to be
Mm.
with my baby. I never really hung out with anyone, but
Mhm.
I never saw Farley drunk or high that I could tell. And one week I said, "Where's Chris Farley?" And nobody answered me. They're like, "Oh," I go, "What?" Like they might have said he's in rehab, but I couldn't. Oh, I'm like, "What? Where? What?" And nobody told me anything. I didn't know anything that was going on.
Part of the specialness of SNL is the way it handles politics and political figures. Your time on the show, you weren't involved in a large amount of political sketches. There's a few weekend update desk pieces toward the end where you comment on something very complicated like tax rates, and then it turns out you have to admit you didn't actually write it yourself. But you do have a great cold open with Phil, where you play a census worker, and Reagan answers the door, and he doesn't remember the answer to your questions, like how many people live in the house and are you married? Very funny. And then the very last season, you're in one of the best sketches of the year, which is the Campaign 92 sketch, where the Democratic candidates are vying not to go against George H.W. Bush because they think it's a suicide mission. Because at that point, Bush was so popular, no Democrat wanted to go against. And you're in that sketch playing Tipper Gore. You're there on behalf of your husband, Al. And you have, I think, the best line of the whole sketch because someone asks, I think it's Bill Bradley, or whoever's playing Bill Bradley, Nealon as Bill Bradley says, where is your husband tonight? And because, of course, Al doesn't want the nomination, you say, he's at a gay porno theater with our kids, which is like a perfect line if you don't want yourself to be nominated by the Democratic caucus, I suppose. So politics.
I don't even remember that line or that sketch.
Well, you were great. Trust me.
It's a great
And you
sketch.
know why? Because I had one line, so I wasn't worried about remembering it. And I didn't have to learn an accent because she didn't have any striking accent of any kind.
Yeah,
I have no memory of that. I wasn't used in the politics a lot because there was no blonde,
right.
squeaky voiced person on the political scene that I could do an impression of.
Did you wish that you would have? Do you wish that you would have been more in the political sketches? That perhaps you would have had the opportunity to play against Phil as Reagan more often, or against Dana as Bush more often, or Perot, or any of those political sketches?
Yes, I would have loved to be in any sketch. I was so looking for lines, but the first time I went up to Smigel and I said, "Why don't I ever get to do any impressions?" And he said, "Because you're nasal." And I said, "Well, aren't there any celebrities who are nasal?" And then he said, "Roseanne Barr." And I said, "And she talked like that." And he goes, "Yeah." And Robert Smigel wrote me my first impression, Roseanne Barr, which I listened to her voice all day and night that whole week, got to do her with her.
Yeah.
And Chris Farley is Tom Arnold. That was super fun. But yeah, of course I wish I could have been in the political sketches, but Jan Hooks, she's so talented, and if there was a blonde character, she would have done it, and she would have probably done it way better than me.
You
You
mentioned
mentioned
you mentioned Smigel. I wanted to ask about the writers bit because you look back at that writing crew that you had during your time on the show, and it's just all killer, no filler. All those writers are incredible, from Franken, Davis, Downey,
Um,
Smigel, Handy, uh, go up and down that list.
Conan
Uh,
O'Brien.
right,
Conan
Conan,
O'Brien.
and Bob Odenkirk, and just crazy. Okay, so not specifically for you, say, but you know better than us who wrote each individual sketch, perhaps. Was there any writer, any of those writers specifically that you just enjoyed, like everything they wrote? Like if it's a Smigel, you knew it was going to be fantastic. Were there any writers that you connected that layer of quality to?
Wow. No, I was always looking in the upper right-hand corner to see if my name was at read through. We get this many scripts and we would all quickly go through, is my name in any of them? So, I never spent enough time studying, which writer got whatever, more things on the, but I will say there was a tall, skinny guy who wrote the handy off commercial where I go, meet me at 5. Dennis Miller. And remember, I had 2 extra fingers
Yes.
and I had to put handy off to make my 2 extra fingers go away like a
Mhm.
wart.
Might be one of the best special effects on the show because it actually looked realistic.
It looked real. It was so funny to me. It was like my first year I was there, like 86 or something. And whoever wrote that, I wish I could remember his name. He was tall and skinny and quiet. And I was so happy that he wrote me something that was perfect for me. And I can't remember his name, but I remember hoping he would write me something else. And he didn't, I don't think. And then like when whoever wrote the Paul Simon Island thing, I was like, oh, they get me. But then they never wrote me another one. And then Jack Handy, when he wrote Deep Thoughts by Jack Handy, he had not done that yet. What happened was I was going around to the writers going, anyone have any ideas for me? And some of the writers said, hey, Jack Handy has this thing called Deep Thoughts. I think he's writing a book about it. They said, that would be perfect for you. You play an airhead that's, you go on Update and go Deep Thoughts by Victoria Jackson, and then just do one, every week. And I was like, yes, that's perfect for me. So I got up the nerve and I knocked on his closed door and I go, hi, are you Jack Handy? Yes. Hi, some of the writers said you have this thing called Deep Thoughts and it would be really funny for me to do. And he went, I'll think about it. Shut his door. And the next week he submits Deep Thoughts by Jack Handy, not by Victoria Jackson, and then does it in a script instead of me saying them. I was like, oh, okay. So he could have given it to me, but he wanted to keep it for himself. So
The reason you were so perfect in that Paul Simon, stranded on a beach or on an island,
Which I
was
think
that
was both of our favorite. That was our favorite sketch of that whole season. That season 12.
because no offense, but just your whole persona is that it's surprising that you would be able to make a watch band out of a out of a pig skin or something. Whereas if it was like somebody like Jan playing that, you could say, okay, I could see Jan
yeah,
probably doing something like that. But because it's you, it's
yeah.
hilarious because it comes as a total surprise.
Paul Simon was making me a placemat out of palm fronds, and I was making him a lawnmower and a watch by smelting the iron ore that I found on the island where we were deserted. That was so brilliant. Man, I think it might have been Al Franken or Jim Downey who wrote that. I wish I could say the right name because they deserve credit. But I think in writer world, they all know who wrote what in
Mm-hmm.
writer land.
You mentioned before the whole idea of recurring characters, and it seems to me I have this theory that people remember the show, remember certain cast members because of their recurring characters. Pat or any of Dana's, church lady or whatever. Do you have regret that no writers ever wrote a recurring character for you? You had Roseanne, who you did a couple times, but did you ever really want that one like recurring character you could do and be known as? That was a
I'm
yes for everybody.
I'm still waiting. Yay, Jesus. I'm still waiting for my recurring character.
You were in a sketch that was a recurring character that I wanted to ask about, which is the very first Mr. Short-Term Memory with Tom Hanks at the restaurant. And that sketch, that character is just perfection. And those sketches are just like clockwork in terms of the timing. And Phil's great. Phil plays off of Tom so well in those sketches. You're very good in that first sketch at the restaurant. So Hanks is almost universally and rightfully acknowledged as being one of the great guest hosts of all time, and that sketch is a perfect example of why. As a cast member, what indications do you have that a host is going to be great, is going to get it, is going to fit in, is going to be wonderful pieces in these sketches, or is not? It's going to be a long week. How did you know, perhaps on Monday, Tuesday, when you meet the host that week, if it's going to be a great week or if it's going to be a struggle?
Never entered my mind.
Hmm.
We're all thinking about number one, ourselves, not getting fired. Do I have anything to do in the show? If the host is bad or good, we could care less because it doesn't affect our life at all. What we were thinking about was, oh, it's a guy. Maybe I'll be in more because I'm a girl. Or, oh, but I was in Toonces was kind of reoccurring.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was perfect for the mother of Toonces. So that was a nice little bone they
Yeah.
threw. They gave me some really good moments, those writers. And Toonces, I did it with Steve Martin and I also did it with Dana.
Mhm.
So it was recurring, but I wasn't, a character. It was just me. But yeah, we didn't think about the host. I mean,
Even if that host was Steven Seagal,
well,
who's widely known as the worst host of your era.
yeah, poor guy. I wonder what's his feeling when people say that. But, he hit on me, which I took as a compliment,
Oh.
but was married, so I thought that was
Just in
great.
his last podcast, Dana said he walked by his dressing room and evidently there was a lady in there with Steven Seagal during the week, so
Yeah.
making noises. So
Oh yeah, he was married to that beautiful woman who said, "Don't hate me because I'm beautiful." Remember Kelly LeBrock or something?
yes,
Yeah.
So when we saw her at the party, it was like, why are you cheating on her? She's the prettiest woman in the world. But yeah, I don't have any ill feelings against him. I think people didn't like how he was arrogant, but we've had other hosts who were arrogant, maybe not. Maybe they were more quiet about their arrogance, but most of the hosts were just great people because they're just most professional stars. I don't know. I think they're hardworking and talented, and
I imagine you have
uh,
to have a little bit of arrogance to be a really great star.
you have to have confidence.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And if you can fake that,
I want to, okay. I asked earlier about Dennis Miller and Weekend Update, and his stint on Update is incredible. I think he's the best Weekend Update anchor in the show's history. And you
Mhm.
guys really seem to have a fun relationship on screen. We don't know what happens off screen, but on screen, it seemed that your personalities meshed well, and he enjoyed the silliness and the fun that you brought with the songs and the handstands and the Christmas tree and the commentaries. And both of you, when I mentioned earlier, that sort of attitude and comedic sense that just fit that era. Dennis had it too, but almost in a complimentary way to you, to where maybe you were a little more zany and goofy. Dennis was a little more serious with the news, but didn't take the news seriously.
I think me and him had great chemistry on camera, but off camera, there was no nothing. I mean,
Hmm.
I used his phone once in his office and he got mad at me and he apologized. And I don't know. Off camera, I don't know where he stands with me, but on camera, great chemistry
Hmm.
and timing.
So who was nicest to you? You said Lovitz usually tried to help you get stuff on. Lovitz is criminally underrated. He's another guy that you we when you think back on the show, you think, well, okay, there's Phil, there's Dana, and then Lovitz is kind of the third banana or fourth. But there's some seasons where he actually he's really
Yeah.
right there at the top. He's extremely talented.
He's I don't know what it is about him. He's very mysterious. I'm a little bit in touch with him lately,
Oh.
texting, but he can do nothing and he makes me laugh. Doing nothing. If he's just in a sketch, I can't take my eyes off of him and I can't figure out what it is. There's some people like that. You just can't take your eyes off of them.
Well, I made a point about watching Lovitz. It might have been season 15, and kind of to your point where you can't take your eyes off him. Lovitz was wonderful at providing exactly what was needed in a sketch. Meaning, if you need him to be kind of this handsome guy, he could be a handsome guy. If you need him to be in the Girl Watchers with Hanks and have the unibrow and pretend to be a loser, he could do that. He could do something huge like acting. Uh, or, that's the ticket. And those are very big characters, but he could play very small too. He did this great sketch with Gina Davis, in which they're the last two people on Earth, or at least, where they are. There's been some sort of nuclear explosion. They're alone. And this little like slice of life sketches, Lovitz trying to pick up his next door neighbor, who is this, gorgeous Gina Davis, and he's just John Lovitz. And there's no giant laugh lines, and he's not playing a massive character, but he really knows exactly how to sell the lines and to create the mood needed to make that piece work. And I think the real genius of, I mean, you could say this about Phil, I guess, too, but the genius of Lovitz was he could take whatever was on the page and make you feel it. No matter what was needed, he could bring it.
So he's a good actor.
He's a good actor.
Acting. That's exactly it. So what was it like watching the show the season after you left? Were you like, oh, I wish I was still there, or you're like, I've had enough. It's their turn now. I'm sick of it.
Okay, I don't remember watching it after because I was getting married. I had a child. I was getting divorced. There was so much going on. I had a holding deal with Fox, and I had my own show called Victoria, and George Clooney was playing my boyfriend. And this is the year after I left, and we were shopping it to ABC, NBC, and CBS, and they all passed on it. And my little joke is, I wonder whatever happened to George Clooney. But so they were paying me like a lot of money, a holding deal, and so my feeling when I left the show, because they said I could stay, Lauren said she can stay as long as she wants. But my thoughts were, I'm going through a divorce. That I don't believe in divorce, but it had to happen. It was a very bad situation. I had a 4-year-old turning 5-year-old daughter. I didn't want to leave her with a nanny. My mother babysat for a while. I didn't want her to lose her dad and have me gone all the time. Professionally, they weren't using me enough. I was running out of ideas. I was out of ideas, actually. And all my cast members were leaving. All of my cast members were leaving too. Kevin stayed longer, and now they've got that guy Keenan who's been there forever.
20 years,
What?
yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't even an option when we were there. It was like Lauren always turning over the cast, keep it new and young. Yeah, it's different. It's a little different now, but I loved our cast. We were like that second year we were together, it was like boom, boom. And we were all so different and we clicked. It was great chemistry. And the writers were so great, like you said. My only story about Conan was like I didn't know what he wrote. I didn't keep track of what people wrote there. But one day I didn't have any money to get home on the train to Connecticut. And I thought, of all the people in this office, who would I not be embarrassed asking for a couple dollars to get on the train? And I was embarrassed to ask anybody. I don't know why. Like, could you loan me $5? I was so embarrassed. And I remember Conan, I felt like I could ask him.
Hmm.
I don't know, he seemed the most kind or gentle or down to earth or something, like I could relate. I don't know. I picked him. I said, Conan, could I borrow a couple dollars? That's all I remember. Hmm.
VictoriaJackson.com is where to find everything Victoria Jackson, including the new album, which is out. When I Get to Nashville, a whole bunch of songs she's written since moving to Nashville. There it is right there. 11 years ago. You can stream it on Amazon or buy it at VictoriaJackson.com. Other wonderful books like Lavender Hair and Is My Bow Too Big, which Victoria was very nice enough to send me after she guested in my SNL class last
Oh,
year.
I did. I sent it to you.
Yes, you did. It was
Oh.
very nice. And so please visit victoriajackson.com. I wanted to maybe end with this question looking forward a bit. So our podcast is called Wasn't That Special? 50 Years of SNL. 50 years is coming up in 2025. If you get an invite to the big shindig, do you want to go back? Do you want to see people again?
Yes, I do. I would love to go to the 50th reunion. Yeah.
You
I
deserve
would.
to. You were a
Yeah,
major
absolutely.
part of the show during the best. I mean, we
Mhm.
rank every cast, and so far your cast has been the best, even better than the original. So, and you were a big part of that.
I always want to go up to Lauren and look in his face and say, Lauren, thank you so much for giving me the best job. And it's changed my whole life. Not a day goes by that SNL doesn't come up in some way. And I told Paul Simon that at the 40th reunion.
Hmm.
I think that was the one. It might have been the 25th. I was at both of those. I think it was the 40th. And I said, Paul Simon, you're friends with Lauren. They're like friends. I said, I'll never get to be near him, you know. Could you please tell him that we are so grateful of what he did for our lives? And just tell him I said thank you. And Paul Simon looked at me and he said something like, oh, he's not warm and fuzzy like that. And I don't know, whatever he said gave me the impression like Lauren could care less. You know, you're just one of the pawns in his kingdom, you know. But I have to say, when I was on the show and it was Lauren's birthday, I gave him a embroidered pillow and he sent me a really cute thank you note and said, I thought I had everything, but now I realize I was missing one thing and this is it. Thank you so much. And so I think deep in the heart of Lauren, there is a soft, loving, sweet, kind heart. And
Aw.
yeah, I love him.
I'm sure he listens to this podcast, so he'll get the
You'll
message.
get the message. That's right. No doubt about it. Victoria Jackson, thank you so much for the time today. And as Christian and I watch every single episode of SNL, we are especially thankful for your time on the show and your castmates, because that was a very, very special time on SNL, and you were a big contributor to a whole lot of it. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. It was really fun. Thank you.